Spokenly, I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spokenly. Hi, it's Andy N from Spoken Label. Thank you today for streaming or downloading another episode of Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up on beginning of 2016 and as of speaking has currently nearly 300 sessions. The full archive is available on Spoken Label bandcamp.com. Although it is available for free for stream and download if you wish, I am always grateful for any sort of kind of donation to enable me to keep the running costs of this podcast going. And enjoy. Take care. Bye bye.
Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house. We're on Zoom again today. I was debating at one point recently when doing this podcast, to me, I was with this lady in person, but it's a little bit earlier. We've still been locked down as a recording. But I have met this lady in person before. We did a podcast, Helen, didn't we, at Manchester Central Library? And you said nearly 3 years ago.
3 years ago. It's unbelievable how time flies.
Yeah, and I've got Helen Kay. I was wondering, obviously. Now, do you remember that time we met, Helen? When we met at Central Library, it was really busy in that library, wasn't it, in the cafe?
Yeah.
And it was like...
Yeah, very different to today, isn't it, where we're isolated.
Very, very weird. And it's been like, I think really we've been locked down now 15 months, haven't we? As of recording and hopefully coming out of it shortly now. But how have you been over lockdown, Helen? Have you been okay then? Have you all just... your creativity has just been plodding along, really?
Yeah, no, it's been fine. I've been very lucky, really, because I can work with I do support work with students with dyslexia, so I've been able to carry that on in Zoom. And I'm quite happy to stay at home and avoid people. So I've been very, very lucky, really. And all my family, we've been managed to carry on working throughout and not had anything so far, touch wood.
Good, yeah. I know it's been my case, as I said to you off mic, I've been at home for most of the past 15 months and doing the podcast at Spoken Label on Zoom, and it's been, some ways, it's an interesting experience actually using Zoom. So how have you found it over Zoom then? Because I'm presuming you'd have used it, haven't you, over the past 15 months?
I've used it extensively, Skype and Zoom and other links, and I think it's been really good for students because if you're dyslexic, sometimes you can't always get out of bed and get to a place, whereas in the comfort of your own home, it's easy to be flexible and things like that. And also in the poetry world, I think I've loved the fact that I've listened to things all over the country, whereas before, you'd only ever attend things that were local events. So I've been everywhere from Scotland to Cornwall, meeting new poets. So I think it's been great, and I hope it carries on because it also allows people with disabilities access to events that they didn't have before.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. Completely agree. I've gone to lots of obviously programs, you could argue, online, and I've seen poets from all kinds of other countries, and I've got a lot from it, really, to be honest with you, because just listen to different people's experiences, really, that we wouldn't have perhaps necessarily got previously. So I know what you mean there.
I mean, there's nothing to beat a live performance, but it's not always possible. And obviously, we're all wanting to go out and read again and enjoy that live contact. But I hope that the Zoom carries on simultaneously with it.
I think it will. You're going to find a lot of this because I know quite a few nights that are going to be doing both. And certainly the night I run, we're looking at trying to do both. So a lot of it will be able to go wait and see the way where lay the land is, really, I suppose, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
But anyway, we're here to talk about you, really, today. We digressed completely before we even got going here. So now, obviously, for people who don't know you, Helen, do you want to tell people very, very briefly about your background as a creative person? So I know you've been active for quite a while, haven't you, in one way or another?
Yeah. I mean, I started writing about 10 years ago. I got my first pamphlet, was all about chickens in 2016. And then I've just carried on, sending work out, attending events and writing. I went and did an MA at MMU, which is why we met before, because I was doing an exhibition of artists and poets connected with dyslexia. And, I've carried on in a way like a poetry activist, as well as writing poetry most days or reading it most days, really. So I eventually got all the poems from the dyslexia project, and I put them together into a pamphlet, and that was launched last year in July, in the middle of the lockdown. It was a lockdown baby, so that was a really significant thing for me to achieve that. Some of the poems had appeared in the exhibition that we talked about in the podcast 3 years ago, and others were added, so it was a mixture.
Yeah, now just to clarify to people, obviously, we're talking about, we better tell people the title of the collection first of all, haven't we? So now the collection is called This Lexia and Other Languages. Now, if people will look at the way Helen's done that, think about, because I'm dyspraxic and Helen's dyslexic. So like with you saying that dyslexia, I got it straight with an intentional pun on dyslexia immediately. Now, before we go into the collection some depth, what made you want to call it this, like this, the dyslexia? The way you did it, dyslexia. And I said, I never got it right then.
Oh, it's actually a really good story about this. I was working for a short time in primary schools when the Ed Balls, gave slots of 10 lessons for children in primary schools. So I went into this school, and one of the pupils there bounced up to me one day and said, Mrs. Kay, what is this Lexia thing? And I thought it was so clever and so interesting that that's how she perceived it, as this Lexia thing. And it stuck with me. And so, it had to be called that.
Oh, okay. So, and I think it's fantastic. I actually think it's a really, really clever title, like with that one. But you were telling me off mic before as well that it just took you a long time to write this little collection as well, hasn't it? You said, and these are one of the poems is over 10 years old, isn't it?
That's right. One of the poems, it was the very first poem about texting, and it was written, I wrote it 10 years ago, and at that time I knew nothing about the poetry world, and I saw online there was a competition called the Trowland District Writers in Nottingham, and it was like a local writers group, and I sent it off, and it won a prize. It won the Vanessa Alhambra Trophy for the most original poem.
Really?
It was lovely. Those kind of writers groups that,
fantastic. Yeah.
A small writers group where they all judged it. They didn't have an external judge, and you got a little comment, like it was a test or something. And so that was like my first kind of success in the poetry world, and it was lovely. And obviously the poem has evolved a lot since then. I've changed it, and I finally put it into sort of text language, because that's one of the many languages, the other languages that people with dyslexia use sometimes or they'll feel comfortable with. So it has evolved, but it's over 10 years old in its evolution.
Now, there's a lot I could talk about this collection. Obviously, like I say, we may be dyslexic myself, but tell us about, obviously, people will see the collection. I recommend this buying immediately. Now, what made you want to split this into 3 sections as personal effects, symptoms, and other languages?
Yeah. You don't have a plan when you start out, do you? It just kind of evolves. So the first section, I found myself writing quite a lot of poems, particularly about my eldest son, because he had quite a lot of trouble in his experience of being dyslexic, at school. And later on, he had a horrible teacher who made him cry and all those sort of things.
I remember you telling me about that last time we spoke, actually. And I thought that one, so yeah.
So naturally, I just started writing a series of poems about his experiences, about really me as a mother as well, watching that process of him going through school. So that was experiences, and it seemed to fall where there were different stages, like one at reception, one at primary, secondary. He didn't go to university, but then I've met students who do. So it felt like I wanted to do these moments in the first section of those experiences. And then in the second section, I began to explore the whole area, because I'm a dyslexia tutor, of all the different types of things that will relate to dyslexia. So for some people, it's their memory that's the hardest thing. For some people, it's they're kind of more dyspraxic than dyslexic. For some people, it's mental health that really impacts. It really does. I wanted to bring out that point that living with a learning difficulty like this often causes stress and some significant mental health issues. And so that kind of made its own section, really, of like all these different symptoms, if you like, aspects of dyslexia. And then I thought, I don't want this to be totally depressing, that people read it and think it's all just horrible gloom and doom, because I began to think about the way people with dyslexia are amazing people. And that sounds a bit glib, but they find different ways of expressing themselves, different languages, if you like. And so the third section was a celebration, I think, of all the different ways of communicating. Some of them, again, like my son, he plays all these trade card games, Yu-Gi-Oh cards and things like that, and they're really complicated, and there's a lot of words actually involved in them, and it amazes me how young lads in particular build up their communication through this. Other things like silence, or people doing sport. There's a poem about table tennis. There's a poem about referring to the swimmer, Duncan Goodhue. It's as if everybody finds their different ways of their own language, because the language of reading and writing is difficult. You develop skills in other areas, really. So I wanted to end it with this celebration of all those things.
Yeah. I think it makes perfect sense doing what you say, saying what you've done there. I agree with you completely with it, because I think it's doing what you've done there. It stops the book from, like I said, becoming just almost impossible to read because of the heaviness of it. You're talking about, I mean, you've done it like it's given that, and there definitely is a light touch in that one straight away with it. So
yeah.
Now I want to ask you a couple of things. Let's run to the general poems, if you don't mind, on it.
Yeah.
Because I know I think I've heard you read this one before. You might have read one of these out at our session last time, about Dad learns Latin at the village school. I think you might have done that one last time, but that one, didn't your dad have some sort of dyslexia as well, didn't he, as you recall?
This is actually about my partner.
Oh, was it partner? That was it, man.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember 3 years ago.
I mean, this is really interesting because it is it's a true story disguised, and I felt I had to ask him his permission to write this because it's a very personal poem. But because he's sort of late 50s in the time when people didn't pick it up, and he had a terrible experience at a local country school, compounded by the fact that his father was a farm labourer, and then there was the posh kids, so that made it worse. But really damaging, humiliating experiences of undiagnosed dyslexia and quite, severe dyslexia, which are life altering, really. So that poem was really, really emotional for me to write, and it is a true story because the headmaster was an unpleasant person, and he did get sacked in the end. He got pulled, and it made the News of the World headline, teacher sacked, and we've got a copy of it still. We keep from 1960, whatever. This horrible headmaster.
Yeah, that would have been rare back then to get sacked like that. Yeah, that completely not getting on. It makes sense in your story there straight away with it. So now, a couple of ones, obviously, like, I know obviously we talked about your son already, and what made you want to do a poem with the title of Dyslexic Son Goes Nil by Mouth? Because nil by mouth is frankly a shocking image.
Yeah, no, it's just the idea that sometimes when you feel a teenager, when you're a teenager, you don't speak, do you? You stop speaking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I get you completely.
It's about that. It's about when you go, and in a way, that's not speaking is a kind of language, isn't it? Because I just thought sometimes we're saying, oh, you should speak more. But actually, sometimes you see all these people who are talk rubbish all the time, and you think, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's not speak. Let's use silence as a language, and that sort of thing. So that was what that was about, really. It was, there's so much rubbish talked on television, isn't there, by people who can talk the talk, but that's about it, really.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely with it. So, as I said, I'm not going to go into a lot more details on this because there's a lot of stories on this where I think it's best if people just explore the collection themselves. But obviously, since then, I know you've now moved on to a website as well, haven't you? Dyslexic Poetry. Do you want to tell us about that next then?
I'd love to, actually. I really would, because when I did the exhibition, and it was really successful, I got a lot of people who were very interested in it, and I toured it round, and I wanted to put in an Arts Council bid, and I did all the work for it for poets to go into schools and raise awareness. And then, of course, COVID came along, and I thought there's not a lot of point in putting a bid in but to go into schools at the moment. So I had to put that all on hold. But I wanted the project to carry on. So instead, I found a dyslexic graphic artist, web designer, to make a website. And I thought we can still keep putting stuff on websites and news and putting things out there. I also did an article for a kind of dyslexia teachers magazine about it. And I got quite a few really nice responses about people working with adults, and Liverpool City College approached me and said, we'd like to do a poetry competition for all our students who are dyslexic. And we ran the competition, and we had a winner and a small prize. And so that went onto the website, and we're hoping with Liverpool City College to do an exhibition next summer too. So the idea of the website is to showcase individual poets and artists, but also to document activities that are going on under the dyslexia creative umbrella, really. So it's in its early stages at the moment, but I'm hoping that, as we come out of lockdown, that more artists and more people will contribute and get involved.
Yeah, I know you've been having a poem in a month going on it, haven't you, so far? And you've had some great poets in there, because a number of which people I know. You've had lovely Mel Warder Woodend on it, and I don't know Nancy Kay, but I do know. I definitely do know. And I've lost her name now. My friend Sam. What's her surname? Oh no, man's just going to kill me. Sam Rapp, that was it. Sam Rapp. I forgot her surname a second then.
That's right, the dyslexic poet.
Yeah.
I think the Nancy Kay was really interesting, because I put that on a dyslexia support group. So this is somebody who has no real connections with the poetry world, but she was dead thrilled and excited that something which she does is like rhyming stuff with children with dyslexia. And I thought that was really important, not just to showcase known poets, but to other people who are making a contribution to, getting children to be creative. So, and Mel's really interesting. She has a kind of publishing thing called Dreamwell. So she does dyslexia. Her partner's dyslexic, and she does dyslexia-friendly books, which are amazing. And I think that's a fantastic thing that she's doing there.
Hopefully, I'm meeting actually Mel fairly soon, because she's coming down to my night speakeasy. Her and John are coming all the way up from Warwickshire, if memory is correct. And they're going to travel all the way down there, especially for that. And that means a lot to me. We get someone traveling that distance like that, because she's a tour de force, incredible energy she has. So.
Yeah, absolutely. What she's kept right through the lockdown, which was really difficult to keep poetry going. She's done workshops, she's done events, she's run. She did a really good project with a book. With pictures and photographs and poems last year during the lockdown. So yeah, it's a real honour to have Mel on the website.
Yeah, no, understandable of it. So I know obviously I'm doing it soon, but people will find out when they go on and see my humble offerings on there some point along the line.
You are the two live poets. It'll be I shall let you know as soon as it's on.
Yeah, and that'll be up for this podcast goes live. But go and check it out once, because my poem for Helen here was basically, it came off an article. My brother sent me actually, Helen, he did. My brother's not dyslexic, but he's colourblind like me. And he found this article on BBC, and he said to me, "You might want to write a poem using elements of this," and he did. And I did. That's why. So yeah, really good. Now, You've got another project on the go, Helen. Will you tell me, was it Nigella? Did you tell me about before?
Well, for those of you who don't know, who are perhaps not on my Facebook, anybody on my Facebook will know that I have a hen puppet called Nigella. And it started when I wrote some poems about chickens, and I wanted to jazz it up a bit, so I used this hen puppet really to, for the children's sake, with a bit of visual eye candy. And I didn't realise at the time that she was more popular than I was. So everywhere I've gone, certainly locally, people are not interested in me, they're interested in Nigella. So it sort of got where I started writing poems. Nigella had to write poems as well. So she wrote poems, and she did a little collection called It's All About Me, Nigella, which just about sums up her character, her persona.
Brilliant.
So during the lockdown, I was isolated with my auntie, who's 99, for 4 months.
Oh, wow.
It was a bit of a thing. And it all happened very suddenly, as we all did. We locked down and we all ran to a place to lock down. And while I was there, I occupied myself every day. Nigella, I took a photograph of Nigella with a caption, and it was a lot of it was like advice during COVID, like clean your doorknobs, or don't let your people drink the whiskey, drink it yourself, and this sort of thing. And then it got I sort of got really carried away, and I started using cardboard boxes, and I made her a car, and I made her a tent, and I made a schoolroom for her. It's like being a child again. It was real Blue Peter stuff. And she really caught the imagination, because people wanted something happy at that time. And so I used to get like 100, 150 likes every day, the regulars, and people making comments and joining in the fun sort of thing. So at the end of it, I didn't want to lose. We did over 100 pictures. I didn't want to lose that, so we made a book. You people, listeners can't see, but it was the book, and it was all the photographs of Nigella doing all her things and the caption. And we raised money for Cheshire Without Abuse in Crewe. And we did a run of 50 books, and they were sold within 24 hours.
Wow.
I thought, yet again,
wow,
my pamphlet didn't sell that quick. Nigella has to be the one. Everybody who was a regular just did it, and it was just a lot of fun and a really nice memory of what the lockdown was all about. You know, a lot of it was humour, and we also got my aunt, who was at 99, involved because we had VE Day, and she got out her ration books and she showed Nigella, her ration books and things. So it was quite a fun thing to do, really, because I don't know about you, Andy, but I didn't really feel in the mood of writing poetry, certainly during the first stages of the lockdown.
No, not really. I did everything but write poetry. I was creative in different ways, and
yeah, exactly that. You want to do something, but I didn't think I could engage. I tried to write a few poems, about COVID and that, but nothing really significant in all that time. But the Nigella thing was just a lot of fun. So that was my other project. She is now taking a bit of a back seat because I don't know about you, but I've started writing quite a lot again now. So, I'm getting back into writing stuff. And
I've just tried to take a break from a book I've been working on for a couple of years at the minute, and I've started to write a load of poems and basically directly on summer or summer, because I've got a friend that's a really good photographer, and I've been writing some poems based on some of his work with permission. So I've done 3 of them, and I want to do others. So yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes it's nice just take new projects on, take a break from longer ones.
Yeah, no, and I think anyway, as a poet, you can't write all the time for 10, 20, 30 years of your life. You have to diversify a little bit and bring in some new materials, really. And I think the Nigella project did that for me. It made me think in a different way. So,
and of course, can't blame you there. Can't blame you there. Now, to conclude, Helen, on the first part, is there anything you've got planned for the future coming up, creative-wise, you can talk about?
Well, there's something I can't talk about, but I have got a sort of a project, completely different. I've written a lot of poems about a guy, a dead poet, a Victorian dead poet called John Barlas, and he was a friend of Oscar Wilde's. And what interested me is that he had significant mental health issues, and they put him away in what they called an asylum in those days for 24 years. And so that he caught my imagination, and I've been trying to write what it must have been like to be put in this place. This man was a genius, and yet, he was put in this environment. And by chance, it's a place in Glasgow called Gartnavel, which is falling down. And I would love to, again, as you mentioned about photography, I'd love to work with a photographer to take some pictures of this building which is falling down, this beautiful old building, and to put that with the poems. So that's once lockdown's well and truly over and we're all safe to move, that's what my next project is going to be about.
Brilliant. No, excellent. Good luck. Excellent. Good luck with it. Keep us informed. Now, if people want to find out more about you, Helen, just to conclude then, obviously they can find your website at dyslexiapoetry.co.uk. Have you got your own website as well, have you? Your own personal website? No,
I'm a big Facebooker. So, and if anybody wants to, I befriend me on Facebook, because I'm very public about that. I also Twitter at Helen Kay 166. So I don't actually have a website, but I do enjoy social. I'm a bit of a social media convert.
Best way to be. Best way to. I don't personally think you need to actually be honest have a website nowadays anyway. So that's why. So I think sometimes having enough Facebook and stuff and been so active and having enough sometimes anyway. So straight away. So brilliant. Okay, that covers all the questions. So what we're going to do, Helen, we'll take a quick break and let you get some of your poems ready for us from your new collection.
Thank you.
See you all in a minute.
Spoken Language.
Hi guys, still here with Helen now. slight change of plan today. Helen forgot to tell me about something in the first part, which is a typical dyslexia, dyspraxic trait, unfortunately. So I know what I'm like with that. But Helen, you were telling me before, weren't you, about film poetry you've been doing? So
Yeah,
would you like to elaborate?
I would. One of my passions in life, as well as poetry, is watching films. I've always loved watching films, and I watched even more films during the lockdown, as you do. And I started writing. It started off with when I watch a film, I often I don't listen to the story or the dialogue so much as what I remember in films. I can never remember actors, but what I remember is individual images. It's the images that I'm a visual person, so I remember these images and they really stick with me. So I started writing poems about individual images in films, like a bit like a ekphrastic poem, but about a film image. So it's as you always do, you start with one and then another one happens and another one happens. So I think that's another sort of pamphlet in the making, will be poems responding to individual images in films, and also perhaps even looking at film poetry, although it fascinates me, but I'm not so good at the tech side of it. But the interaction of film and poetry is great.
We said before, on it, since off mic, this is an interesting point for people to look at. I'm always a believer when you learn how to master one field as a creative person, and you're in this time with your film poetry, you find the more, when you learn one thing, you can often then, not to say master a second one, but you can pick something up, I think, quicker than you can in the first style or skill sometimes. And like I said, we talk about dyslexia, dyspraxia. You know this more than I do. I'm sure I've read a stat somewhere saying a lot of the most clever people in the world have some sort of dyslexia or dyspraxia.
Yeah, no, there's done a lot of research around this. That on average, it doesn't mean that every single dyslexic person is Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci, but on average, dyslexic people are far more creative and far more thinkers than non-dyslexic people. So it's as if somehow that kind of, if one avenue's shut, you work harder at another avenue, so you develop some amazing talents and skills in another area. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
That's right.
Plus, it gives you a greater understanding of just people and other people's difficulties, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, completely agree with you. Completely agree. So like I said, it's where people bearing this in mind normally. Like, if you ever get registered as something, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It basically means you just got to look at things in a completely different way. So, and that's why. So, do you envisage wanting to do more of these over time, Helen? Then do you reckon do more of these film poetries, as you call them?
I think so. I think I'm going to do a lot more film poems. Whether I do it the other way around and make poetry films, it's certainly an area that interests me. It's like some people like to put their poetry to music or to art or something like that. But for me, I think film is the medium that I'm drawn to. So,
no, good luck.
Have you ever done any, Andy?
Oh, not films. I put music onto poetry before now.
Yeah.
I've done it fairly recently as well. Films, no, I haven't done them. Probably because I get fed up when I'm trying to film, stick a camera in a direction. I'll probably have to get a cameraman to do it for me, and a film director say, "No, Andrew, do it this way, do it that." No, not yet. Not yet. So anyway, Helen, okay, we better digress or diversify into your poems now.
We do.
Haven't we? So now I know you're going to do 4 today. And just to let people know, I presume all 4 are coming from your new collection, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm going to do 4 from this Lexia Other Languages, sort of across from the beginning to the end. So the first one I'm going to do is in the experiences section, and it was actually based on a person that I did meet many years ago. So it's one of the hardest things when particularly as an adult, is actually going to that assessment. You know, young people, they grow up with being dyslexic, but it's so traumatic for an adult, you know, suddenly to realise that your whole life this has been the difficulty. And so this is about an adult learning that he's dyslexic. It's called The Day Joe Found Out. He nearly didn't go to the assessment. She kept shuffling paper, sucking her specs. He didn't hide the 20 years in jail. More you run, more footprints follow you. She said his IQ was extremely high. He told her all about his tarot cards, how he promised a girl with a blue moon smile that she would quit Oldham and catch the sun. How the girl said he should turn professional. Dyslexic. It was dealt him like a card that held his fate, spelt out the reasons for 20 years of Class A hate. So that's a bit of a hard hit. Some of the poems are a bit hard hitting. It was a very hard hitting experience, you know, to this incredibly intelligent person spending a significant amount of time in prison because of being misunderstood. So the next poem is a little bit more upbeat. One of the symptoms, one of the things that people have difficulty with is short-term memory. Not being able to remember things. It's a major issue. In fact, the most common issue for adults with dyslexia is short-term memory. So this is called short-term memory loss. It starts with an empty, tight-lipped jug or a foggy eviction from my narrative. Familiar names are clinging to my tongue. I'll lose my spectacles and wash my purse. A slush of turnips blackens in the pan. Others fear dementia. I was born misplacing. Mid-stairs, purpose waves goodbye. I float. Quiz time. I parrot an answer, claim it's mine. At night, I lie awake to rescue hunches. It started with a P. Was it a K? Next day fills with Mrs. Malaprop, what's it, pen drives, brillig, crib sheets. Only the key things cross the neural pathway. The days that leaked, the saltiness of now, the dregs of pain, the scent of being loved. So that's
great
about,
ending there. Great ending, that last one.
You know, it's about other things in life, isn't it? That they're more important things than, you know, facts, really.
Yeah, no,
They're
of course.
totally overrated, these facts, aren't they? You can look them up on Google anyway.
Brilliant.
So the next one is I've never ever read this, you know. So I don't know if you find when you're reading things, you tend to go for the few that people say, oh, that's nice. And you think, oh, they like that one, I'll do that one. So this is one that I've never read before out loud. And it's about students who write essays and that panic, that general all over panic when there's a deadline and you've got to write an essay. Everybody's been there, haven't they? And it's, yeah. So I imagined it as a bit like playing that game, you know, what time is it, Mr. Wolf? Dinner time, you know, it's like you're waiting, you're trembling, waiting for the deadline to come. And it's called The Student's Essay Blues. What time is it, Mr. Wolf? The time between know it and say it splits open. I sleep beneath a sheet of crumpled plans. The clock's claw-sharp hands slit a fleeting hour by the throat. 1 o'clock. A mob of post-it notes, a can of Sprite, write a line, but I can't cope. My Dal is overheating. Heavy drops roll down the can and nothing gels. 2 o'clock. This journal perfectly sums up my views. Use their words, or sweat till dawn to find my own. A growly dinner time rumbles my head. A paragraph is born. 3 o'clock. This word count is a plaster cast. At last, I find some tricks to trim it down, put points in quotes, edit names to acronyms. 4 o'clock. The mark machine decides my fate. Elated selfies or a trip to welfare? Why make a fish climb up a tree to gasp on air, hot air, dead air? And I think that's one of the most famous sort of things. Why make a fish climb up a tree? You know, that's what I often feel with students in particularly higher education, you know, having to do the thing, you know, like referencing. What a fiddly, dyslexia unfriendly thing referencing is. You know, it should be banned at birth. Okay, so I'm going to end the 4 with another upbeat one, because as I said, the latter part of the book is about people succeeding through other languages. And again, it's a bit autobiographical, because my son, he found his passion in table tennis. And we used to go to the Castlefield Gallery in Manchester, and that's where he discovered his particular talent, which is reflex actions, which doesn't require any processing of thought. So it's called Tocking Back, and it's in 2 parts. Number 1. The Science Gallery stirred up the screeching moon kids of rosy mums and stubble dads in Sunday jeans, half watching weights and water wheels. He fixed his eyes on one exhibit, the same one every visit, that tested reflex movements. When the red light flashes, hit the bottom. Ice cream failed to lure him from beating milliseconds. This lad, labelled slow, whacked the winking ball with his palm, and life began. Palm, bat, light ball, and bounce. Part 2. Let it rain, who cares, he laughed. He hated bikes and swimming baths. The muddy park had made it clear he never would be signed by City. 2 bent bats and a dented ball, a slouching net across a gate-legged table that opened up its pummelled wings to fill our tiny lounge. Sulky serves soon faded. The ball now spun in its loom of air that wove his hand to its arc, his heart to its tapping pulse, his brain to the curve of its skull. Tock, 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 tick. And it is a great sport. I love table tennis because it's such an inclusive sport.
It's great fun. I used to do that when I was at school myself. And
yeah, absolutely.
The amount of times I used to smash the balls by sending them everywhere they shouldn't have gone, often bouncing off the table correctly, but I couldn't guarantee where they go after the first bounce. Yeah,
and it's such fun. In lots of ways, people in wheelchairs play it, people of all ages play it, and it's throughout the world. They've got a table tennis table in every country because it's a relatively cheap sport to play as well. So it's become his passion, really. So
good. No, I think you need. If it helps you overcome your problems like that, you need to know that it gives you a focus. And I agree with you completely with that one, Helen. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure today, Helen. Hopefully, it won't be another 3 years before we speak again. Hopefully not.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, and thank you because it's the book has taken a long time, and it feels very. It is a really emotional book for me to do, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think obviously we don't overflog it or oversell it, if you know what I mean. But I think it's where I know myself now from what you've gone through. It's been a life's work for you, this book, and hopefully your follow-up book won't prove as difficult, basically. So
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think that's it. Each book is, when you write poetry, every direction's got to be different, hasn't it? You don't just do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. So that's why I said everybody check it out. I love this collection. It's one of my favourites this year and last year, definitely. So, well, hang around, Helen. I do need to speak to you post-podcast. So it's been a pleasure today. So as always, thank you again, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Take care, guys and girls. As Don Callis at Impact Wrestling says, stay safe and stay over. And we'll see you next time.
Spoken Label.